The race to decarbonise logistics is well underway, but the challenge remains immense. In this episode, we're looking at many of the initiatives, such as DP World's low carbon truck program, that are both trialled and implemented in its quest to reduce carbon consumption in the sector. Joining me today is John Trenchard. He's Vice President of Sustainable International Supply Chains Europe at DP World. He's basically DP World's Mr. Green, and he's here to discuss the significant progress that's been made, as well as to identify areas where opportunities still exist to make impact. In an industry where small changes can multiply out to major improvements, John and I have a fascinating and relevant conversation in which some extraordinary numbers are quoted.
Welcome to Logistics Business Conversations, the podcast exploring the ideas and insights shaping today's logistics industry. Featuring leading voices from across the sector, we examine key trends, emerging challenges, and the innovations driving the future of supply chains.
So John, welcome to Logistics Business Conversations. Great to have you talking with us today. We've got a lot to cover. So we're going to be touching on decarbonisation. We'll sit in a really important position because it can make a difference, right?
Well, you'd like to make a positive difference. We certainly can make a difference. Decarbonisation is increasingly important for a lot of the population. You're beginning to see the effects of climate change all over the place. We have an important role in the supply chain as DP World. We're operating in 79 different countries. We are physically touching around 10% of world containerized trade. So that's a really important area of responsibility that we've got. And where we can perhaps offer customers lower carbon options or more sustainable options for their supply chains, that's a point of differentiation for us as well in the supply chain.
It's just the pure nature of logistics. It's going to use carbon. We want stuff to get from A to B. We need stuff to get from A to B. It's almost impossible to do that without consuming carbon. So where do we start? I know we've already started. Where are we on that journey?
Well, if you really start, those ships that are going around the world used to have sails on them.
Yes.
So that was a low carbon solution.
Yeah, but they were made from wood. Trees were chopped down.
That is true. That is true. So yes, so if you've got a shipment that goes from China to the United Kingdom, for example, it will have some landside logistics in the origin side. It will be shipped through a container terminal. It will go on a container ship. It will be unloaded in Europe, discharged, and then go into the European distribution network. And often that container will have to get back again.
Yes.
Sometimes it's going to load in, sometimes it hasn't going to load in. One of our biggest exports from the UK, at least, is slightly damp air because that's going back in containers back to Asia again. So you may have a shipment which has got maybe 3 or 4 tons of carbon embedded in the shipping from Shanghai to Southampton and London Gateway. And then you've got local distribution as well. So a delivery which goes up to Birmingham, for example, would be about 550, 600 kilos of CO2 for typical road delivery. And you're looking there for sort of a few tons of carbon for 15 to 20 tons of goods, which are being shipped halfway across the planet.
So where is the largest proportion of that carbon being consumed? Is that in the landside operations?
Well, ships are actually very, very efficient.
And they're not exactly going on full throttle, are they?
Well, we're hurrying up and speeding as eco as possible at the moment.
Yeah.
So actually per ton kilometre, ships are very, very efficient. The next one along, then you go to rail. That's the next efficient one. The next mode is road, and the one which is the least efficient is air.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you can somehow think about modal choice, that certainly drives behaviour in terms of carbon emissions.
Right.
So one of the things that we've done in the UK, and to our position as a port, we've got this very luxury position that we are an ecosystem. So the 2 ports in the United Kingdom we're offering, which is London Gateway and Southampton, we have over 4,500 trucks visiting on a daily basis. We have over 40 trains on a daily basis. And we have many other members of the ecosystem who are interacting with us. So we have looked at, can we actually encourage customers to choose rail as part of their solution and not just road as the first instance. So back in 2023, we launched something called the Modal Shift Program, where we took £10 as a fee. And we said, if your container goes out by rail within 140 miles of port, we'll give you £70, $100 as an incentive for every container that does that. And what we saw, we didn't know if this was going to work or not. What we saw was we drove the percentage of rail for the port at Southampton from 21% up to around today, 31%. So we've moved over 200,000 container truck journeys from road to railroad combination.
So what was the hit that the customer would have taken by making that?
Well, what we've done here is we've tried to give the container the benefit of $100 incentive to cover that up. Now, each container that does that journey swap is saving 1/4 of a ton of CO2. And that's not by changing a hydrogen atom or doing anything interesting with technology. That's just using the trains and the physical infrastructure that's available in Europe, in this case in the United Kingdom, to its full extent, and then using the natural mode for the final mile delivery is always suited for truck for the final mile. So one thing which we need to get beyond is that this is not a competition between road and rail. This is a systems thinking. This is road and rail and shipping working together in a complementary basis. And so that was a really interesting start point for us to use our position in the ecosystem to try and drive change. Now, we've paid out something like over £7 million worth of incentives now to move that 200,000 trucks across. And we've taken over 15 million truck miles off the strategic motorway network in the United Kingdom, which is the M27, A34, M3.
Mm-hmm. Southampton.
Yeah, so it's Southampton sort of trunk road, which is going through, and it's been recognised. So it's something where customers have got a choice.
Yes,
they can choose to do it or not, and there's an impact to it. So that was where we started, and that was back in 2023.
So it kind of ties back into your opening lines when we talk about the extent of DP World's operations. You make these operational changes and incentives, and the implications and repercussions are massive.
Well, we're very fortunate because the two high-quality deep water ports that we've got in Southampton and London Gateway, we're moving just over 50% of the containers coming into the UK.
That's a very deliberate strategic location. When DP World was developed, it had to be rail connected. I remember that decision was.
It has to be rail connected.
It's no coincidence.
And also we've invested over £6 billion in these ports. These are not small adventures. They are strategic assets for the British economy to be able to trade internationally and trade efficiently. So the new trains that we've now got in London Gateway and in Southampton, they're capable of handling the world's most efficient container ships. And many of your listeners will know about these. I mean, they're vessels which contain 24,000 containers.
Yes.
They're very big beasts. The most efficient
to behold, aren't they?
But the most efficient ship in the world is a 24,000 TEU vessel full with 24,000 TEUs.
Yes.
And the most inefficient ship in the world is a 24,000 TEU vessel with one container. Because that means it's sailing and there's a lot of inefficiency there. Yeah. So it's really important that we can have them in full profile, fully loaded, and make sure that we are getting those ton-kilometre efficiencies by using the port.
So you talk about the port infrastructure. I was a little bit of a backstory, born and brought up very close to Felixstowe port, and sort of remember smelling diesel. You know what I mean? But I presume today's cranes and gantry cranes and container stackers, they're a lot less dirty than they would have been a generation ago.
There's a lot of improvement. We're certainly looking to electrify as much as possible on the ports. And we're spending a lot of investment and making capital investments so that in the longer run, it's important when you're looking at these business cases to make sure that it's running, we are getting a lower operational cost or an efficient position for the longer run.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we're doing across Europe is looking to see how we can get ahead of the curve and cover those investments to make that energy transition so that we can offer more efficient ports and connections as we go through. In Southampton and in London Gateway, we instigated something called an energy transition contribution, which is a kind of contribution to trying to make these investments. And that's enabled us to invest heavily in this equipment. And the benefit's been quite stark, actually. In Southampton, containers are coming through the port and going back out again. Back in 2015 was about 50 kilos of CO2 for that round trip to happen. Now in 2025, the numbers are just in, we're below sort of 4 or 5 kilos for that same comparison. So you're seeing a 90%-ish reduction on what's going through the port. But of course, the port is only a small part of the whole supply chain, but it's an important enabler because we're basically joining this ecosystem which is coming through.
And if that's rolled out across the entire DP World estate, maybe not today, but eventually, suddenly a 90% figure is very significant.
Well, it's a great result, isn't it? But I don't want to hide the fact that this is hundreds of millions of dollars
Yes.
that is being invested in transforming to electric and choosing sometimes intermediate fuels as well, stepping into things like HVO, hydro-treated vegetable oil, which is giving us an intermediate step as we build into electrification. One of the things that we've done in the UK is we've looked at a green corridor concept from pilot station in to sort of near the port, and we've explored by putting lower carbon fuel in container ships to address the emissions of that pilot approach, using the benefit that we've got from the investments we've done in the ports to show that we are actually performing better than the market standard. And we're increasingly looking to see how we can use that. We're using something called carbon inset credits, which are environmental attribution certificates, which allow customers to report these savings for their supply chain emissions. Now, for a typical customer and importer into the United Kingdom, they've got Scope 1 emissions, which is their own operations. They've got Scope 2 emissions, which are electric inputs. And they've got Scope 3, which is upstream, downstream supply chain emissions. And SBTI, which is the Science Based Targets initiative, I'm not sure if your team will be aware very much of this, but
They'll be Googling.
brilliant, super. It's a fun read. They've just announced their version 2 of their advice on sustainable supply chains. And they're allowing now these carbon inset credits to be used for carbon accounting for Scope 3. And that's really important because if you ship a container through Southampton or London Gateway import, each customer earns 250 kilos of carbon inset credits, which are generated from these interventions near or alongside the port, which they can then use to address those 4 tons that we talked of 10 minutes ago, to reduce those emissions. And that's allowed now under the SBTI approach.
So every touch point, John, I have with DP World, when we talk about decarbonisation in those conversations, it feels like it's a very hard-baked internal wish and desire within the organisation. This is far more than just a box-ticking exercise. This is something that you really wish to do within the business itself.
I think we have to have relevance. We have to have relevance for customers. And one area where we can really have relevance is supporting in this challenge, this opportunity, because it's a challenge, but it's also a business opportunity because it's disruption in status quo. And I think so long as we can work a way where the business case works for everyone to some extent, then we're in a good position to go through it. Because I don't want to give a two, what do they call it, rose pink glasses.
No,
you need to make sure that we're clear on the value that we're addressing.
Yes.
We're clear on the value that is in play for our customers, and we're clear on the value which is in play for us as well. And if we can get that trade-off between those stakeholders clear, then we've got a good case for decarbonisation. And so far, because of the position and because of what's happening, and because I think in certain markets, consumers are interested in trying to make tomorrow slightly less bad than today is, I think it's been accepted. And we've had good progress on those fronts.
Yes, it has to come from the customer, but it's not enough for it just to come from the customer.
No.
You need to almost preempt and give them what they need or what they don't yet know that they think that they need.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Customer demand and demand signals to be able to look at this is really important.
Yes.
But what I would say, though, is that we need to extend the conversation beyond the traditional procurement last year versus this year. What we are trying to do is engage with customers to think about supply chain choices, which still are a strong value proposition, but are a value proposition potentially on more than one aspect. They're now a discussion about resilience. They're now a discussion about optionality, because sustainability and decarbonisation gives you the opportunity to have more than one choice in terms of how you're servicing your supply chain.
So we've talked a bit about the, obviously the multimodal shift. We've talked about electrification, some of the portside operations. What's next in DP World's plan to help reduce carbon in this?
So we're helping with these low carbon solutions for customs agents and beneficial cargo owners through the carbon inset program. We've helped rail, so there's still quite a large proportion of cargo which is going by road. So one of the things that we looked at the start of this year was launching the low carbon truck program in the United Kingdom. And the way that works is that any truck which comes to our port more than currently 50 times in the quarter, they can earn 5,000 litres of HVO, hydro-treated vegetable oil, for the price of diesel.
Right.
So
So that's the big handicap, is it currently is the cost of HVO.
there's a price differential, there's a green premium. So we didn't know how this was going to work. We've currently got 63 trucking companies signed up in the UK, 1,500 trucks that we're monitoring to see that we can do this diesel. And we've got fuel service arrangements with 3 fuel providers. And we've now got hauliers, trucking companies, drayage partners, drawing down HVO, which is up to 90% lower reportable CO2. There's still CO2 at the tailpipe, and it is an intermediate fuel, and it does depend on the fuel stock, so we need to make sure that we got that in. But it does allow our haulage partners to now experiment with lower carbon solutions.
I mean, nobody expects you to go from 100 to 0 overnight, but this does sound like very
It's a transitional step. One interesting aspect that we put to this was, in order to qualify for the program, companies have to attend carbon literacy project training to get carbon literacy, so that you understand how carbon fits in, what does it mean, what is a ton of CO2 carbon equivalent. I mean, there is some data here. Yeah, we mentioned scope 1, 2, 3 before as well. So we've put over 100 participants through the carbon literacy project training that we deliver, but we're doing it in association with that very, very valuable resource which is out there. And that gives more of the reason why we can make these decisions. And that's important because a lot of these logistics decisions are not made centrally once a year. They're made by real people doing real jobs in the real supply chain and making decisions about lower carbon options. So that's quite useful. So that's exciting. We've recently reduced the hurdle to try and encourage more trucks to join, and we're actively encouraging haulage companies to join up in the UK. So if you are listening to this and you have a haulage provider, ask, are you in the low carbon truck program in the UK?
Is it a pilot or?
It's a trial, and we're committed to run that trial into 2027. So we've got quite a good run up, and we've got the fuel providers on board. So we're working with a New Era Energy, Shell, and Certas, and they're working with us. And then what came out of this was we're not trying to get everyone hooked on HVO. Electrification, at least in the European market, seems to be where this is going in the road haulage market. So we launched, in conjunction with Cambridge University's joint project, something called EVITA, which is our Electric Vehicle Introduction and Transition Accelerator. I know it's a mouthful, but we like EV and little EV, so this is where we are. And basically what this is a series of 12-week trials where hauliers can take a subsidized EV truck capable of carrying containers from the ports. They can use electrons provided at our truck stops at the ports, and they can test these EVs not on PowerPoint, not on Excel, and not on Excel pictures. In reality, they can learn, the tire contracts is quite different. They can learn. Well, we need to be careful about how the drivers are learning to check the charges. Well, how do we schedule the brakes and the timings? Or we can't use it for these jobs because they're not complementary. We've had 4 hauliers go through that, and we've just announced that we've taken on 4 brand new electric trucks to extend that fleet, run it for the next 3 years, and we can put another 48 trials of these truckers through the program to suck it and see, to try it, good or bad.
The trucks are owned or leased by yourselves?
We orchestrate the lease. We're taking the risk on them. And we're doing it in conjunction with a partner, HireCo, and any trucking company who's interested, who's working outside the port, working with the ports. I mean, we're doing it to service the flows which are coming through London Gateway, Southampton. They can access and try this. And what's quite rewarding is the first company that took one of these on board. It took a while to get used to it and get going with it. They're a medium-sized company, quite tight. They've just made their first trucking order since doing the program, and they've ordered a number of conventional
for themselves.
They've numbered conventional units which are burning dinosaur juice, diesel, but they've also bought their first electric truck on the back of this trial.
Right.
Now, okay,
that's progress, right?
It's only one truck. That's progress. It would not have happened if we'd not done this introduction.
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity to lean in, learn. If you're a cargo owner and you're listening to this, please try and use a low carbon truck program member. There's 63 of them there. And if you can use someone who's doing the EVITA program with trialing the electric vehicle, it's really useful to try and do this. We've also spent some time working with the Smart Freight Centre out of Amsterdam, a not-for-profit organisation who are really looking at accelerating progress in the transition in the industry. And we've joined their Electrifying Drayage Alliance. Drayage is port transport haulage or container trucking is Americanism,
Yeah.
which is great. And they are trying to link, as a not-for-profit body, cargo owners, providers, charge point operators, and logistics hubs
Yes.
to try and link this
To
together.
be joined up
Well,
as best we can.
there is a collaborative advantage here, and there's a huge collaborative advantage to be able to try and join this up and do this together.
Yes. And do you see yourselves as almost sort of overseers of this initiative?
Now, in order to do things at scale in the logistics space, you need to have some kind of aggregator. And that aggregator might be a regulator, it might be a government, it might be a large customer. So and there's some very big, large customers who are making big plays in this space. Or it could be a logistics hub, or it could be a port. Because the port is, by definition, linking landside players together with the website. So it's a strategic position that gives us this linkage.
So, John, where does the rollout go after this? We're talking, you could say, predominantly about the UK here, but where are you taking this next?
Well, the good thing is that, as you said, this is important for DP World. So we've got a sort of the global program called EcoRoute, which has started to join some of these things together so that we can be very clear towards customers about some of the stuff which is out there for lower carbon choices. We're looking to try and extend this into other markets. So across Europe, we're certainly looking at how can we support some of these transitions, how can we look at our own operations, and how can we look at shoreside power, which is a major investment requirement costing many hundreds of millions, which will be required legally by 2030.
That's very soon.
That's only 3 or 4 investment iterations away. So
this will be for hooking up to vessels.
Yeah, so this is vessels alongside.
They can shut off their burners.
They can reduce the emissions, which are there. Never use absolutes in this.
Not yet.
We've got success in the Americas. We've got some great stories in the Americas where we've got investments in low carbon solutions in the ports. In Africa, we're doing a trial with biodiesel in South Africa to try and use lower carbon solutions for supply chains connecting there. There's interest in Southeast Asia, Oceania as well in these. And we've got good professional teams that are looking at in various different locations around the world.
So the energy going into these port side supplies has to be, by definition, green energy.
Yes. Well, there's two aspects here. One is about air pollution emissions, which are happening close to the port. They don't necessarily need to have green energy for that, although it helps.
Yes.
But yes, the idea is that we get onto sustainable energy off of the network. And there's there's lots of experts involved in this in terms of making sure that the grid connections work and the electrons are the right color and available at the right price and available at the right time. Yeah. So there's a lot of work for electrical engineers over the next few decades. One thing I probably should mention is that we've also looked to see if we could support customers with their freight forwarding needs in other markets. And we launched a program called Insetify in Sweden, Belgium, and Portugal, where if you ship containers with our freight forwarder network there, you earn 100 kilos of carbon inset credits, ocean credits, per tin you shipped. And that's a trial which is underway, getting good traction, certainly a lot of interest with small and medium-sized customers who want to make a difference and find it difficult to access possibilities to do that. And it's giving the opportunity for logistics professionals to have a discussion about those lower carbon choices and more sustainable options. So we're looking to see, can we go further with that? That's a trial at the moment. So exciting stuff, lots of new things, lots of new questions. Some things work, some things not so much, but they're always high impact learning opportunities. And I'd like to say thank you to the supply chain partners and to customers who've worked with us, tried some of these things. Sometimes it doesn't work out so well, sometimes it does, but it's a learning opportunity because it's really important that we don't wait for perfect.
Right.
Good enough, and let's get on with it.
My future-leaning question about what perfect looks like is probably going to be impossible to answer. Let's assume that perfection cannot be achieved. Where do we think we could get to realistically?
What's next in logistics? We're asking the experts. In our Crystal Ball segment, industry leaders share their predictions for the future.
Well,
I suppose timescale is...
It's a very big question.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe this is John now answering rather than John from DP World.
Right, let's assume that's the case.
We have to make a difference. And so long as tomorrow is slightly less bad than today,
right,
and we're doing something which is going in the right direction, yes, the data needs to be there. Yes, we need to have good carbon training. We need to understand what's going on. Yes, we need to have the business cases. The business cases need to be there. There needs to be value for everyone. But those steps, let's not let perfection get in the way of progress.
I feel more carbon literate having spoken with you today.
But go and do your carbon literacy training. My name's John, and I'm carbon literate.
I love it. Listen, it's great talking with you today. Thanks so much for joining us on Logistics Business Conversations.
Thanks very much.
All the best.